StrayAllDay.com.
Now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unified philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is how to know what you are doing. Before we get started, let me remind everybody I send out a text message every morning, guaranteed to have you focused, sharp, and on point to start your day. I call it the daily motivation. You want to receive this message, so all you got to do to get into my text community completely for free is text me at my number 305-384-6894. Once you're in there, you'll be getting a weekly motivation I send out every Monday called the Monday Motivation, and you have the option to get the daily motivation if you like. We'll tell you about all that as soon as you text me. Again, free of charge. Number is down below in the description. Secondly, workonyourgameuniversity.com. That's a place where I do all my coaching. If you want to work with me directly, we focus specifically, our 4-part framework is based on mindset, strategy, systems, and accountability. If any of that or all of that sounds like what you need right now in your business, and I'm the type of person who can help you get there, you can judge for yourself. I put these shows out that you get a pretty good feel of where I come from in my approach. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. That link is down below in the description as well. Everything's down below in the description except what's about to come in this episode. That is right here at the top. You got to listen to it. So getting into this topic, how to know what you are doing. Have you ever heard somebody say the phrase, I know what I'm doing? Or you ever hear, or maybe you have used the criticism against somebody, you don't know what you're doing? All right, today we're going to talk about how to know exactly what you are doing and how you can tell. You can also use this. You can use this as a framework for yourself. When you're doing anything, how do you actually know that you know what you're doing? And also, if you're looking at someone else, how can you tell that that person actually knows what they're doing, regardless of what they say? There's some people who say they know what they're doing, but they actually don't. And there are some people who don't say they know what they're doing, but based on what you can observe about them, they actually do know what they're doing. They just don't announce it. So let's get into this so we know how to know when a person knows what they're doing, including yourself. Point number one, topic again, how to know what you're doing. Militant measurement. Militant measurement. What does this mean? This means measuring your behaviors and your performance and making sure that you're basically keeping tabs on what is being done so that you know where you're at. Right? People who are professional at what they do, and people who are professionals know what they're doing. People who are professional at what they do always are measuring their output. They're measuring their work so that they know how they're doing relative to how they were doing yesterday or how they're doing today and what they're going to expect from themselves tomorrow. They are measuring their performance so they have some type of baseline or standard to which they can compare future and or past performance. Also, to which maybe other people in their environment can compare performance. So militant measurement. This goes back to, I believe it was I can't even remember who the person who was running the company. It might have been the Dale Carnegie Steel Company. Might have been his company, but I may be getting the names wrong. But in that company, they had a day shift and a night shift of people who will work in the steel factory to basically manufacture steel. And one of Carnegie's staff members, this guy by the name of Charles Schwab, yes, that Charles Schwab, he came up with this great idea because Carnegie was looking for ways to increase the productivity in the factory. So what Schwab did, was at the end of the day shift, he grabbed a big piece of chalk and in the middle of the factory floor, he wrote a big number, which was basically the number of pieces of steel that had been manufactured, however they measured that. He wrote that number down on a piece of chalk in the middle of the factory floor and he put a circle around it. And he didn't even need to give any explanation as to what that number was referring to, because when the night shift guys came in, first thing they saw was that big number circled in the middle of the factory floor. So now what was their mindset? Now they were motivated or inspired to beat the day shift's number. The night shift wanted to beat the day shift. So what the night shift would do at the end of their shift is they would erase the number that was left by the day shift and they would put in their usually bigger number from the night shift in the middle of the floor. When the day shift guys came in, they saw that number and they tried to beat that. Then the night shift guys came in and they tried to beat that, so forth and so on. And this simple practice done with a piece of chalk increase the productivity of the factory simply because they basically gamified it and turned it into something that was being measured, but one team was trying to beat the other team. So measuring your output is one thing that people who know what they're doing will do. Right? And you can do this yourself. You don't have to have a day shift and a night shift to compete against. You can compete against yourself. Or you can just simply hold yourself to a standard. You can say something like, those of you who are book writers or you plan to be a book writer, and it's taking you years to write a book, you can say something like, all right, every day I'm going to write at least 500 words. And your word writing document can tell you how many words you have written. So you can easily measure this, or I'll write this many pages, or I'm going to get this many chapters done. You can measure by time. I will do this thing and I'm going to do it within this time frame. That's another way that you can measure. You can have benchmarks. You can say, by this point, I'm going to be this far along. So by 3 weeks from now, I'm going to have this done. But in the next 3 hours, I'm going to have this done. These are all different ways that you can measure. Okay. And again, we could just call this point measurement. I didn't have to call it militant measurement, but I called this first point militant measurement for a couple of reasons. Number one, I'm calling it militant measurement because this is about holding yourself accountable to certain standards of performance, specifically when it comes to your output and the time that it takes to produce said output. Both of these. Well, the reason I'm using the adjective of militant is because this is about measuring your output and how long it takes you to produce that output, both together. Also, I'm calling it militant in a more colloquial way because many people will hear what I am describing here and using that word militant, and they may consider it to be too stringent, too constricting, maybe too personally demanding on you. It is too tough on some of you to hold yourself accountable to a certain amount of output done within a certain amount of time. That may cause you to feel pressured. You may feel pressured trying to hold yourself to that kind of standard. And the reason many people don't like this is because this level of accountability, this makes it extremely clear whether you are being productive and effective and efficient, or let's be honest, if you're not. All right. This matters. And we talked about effectiveness versus efficiency back in episode 2161. We also talked about productivity, effectiveness, and efficiency in episode number 2670. One of the main reasons a lot of people don't want to hold themselves to these level of accountability is because it's going to be very obvious what you're doing and what you're not doing. And if you ain't getting anything done, it's going to be real clear. And a lot of people don't want that. They don't want that light being shown on them if they know that they ain't doing anything. And some of you I may be describing right now. See, by this process of measurement, you cannot hide if you're not performing. When you're militantly measuring what you're doing, there's no hiding. And when you are performing, it's going to be obvious. But the lines are clear. In the advertising world, for example, you may see companies with really big billboards on the highway. For example, Apple has controlled this billboard space that's across the street from where I live for many years. As a matter of fact, they just keep changing the billboard. They're usually promoting one of two products, either the AirPods or the iPhones. Usually the two products they're promoting. Sometimes the Apple Watch, but usually one of those two products. The question is, with Apple spending all this money on this billboard, how do they know what that billboard is producing in terms of return on investment? Well, the answer is, with a billboard, they don't really know. They don't know. There's no way of measuring it. But if you were doing something like direct response advertising, which tracks clicks you can track cost per click, you can track revenue for conversions, is directly accountable down to the penny. So if I was to not dominate, but if I was to control rather that billboard space that Apple has, I would put something on there that caused people to respond specifically, such that any way somebody responded, I would know it came from that billboard. So I would put something like text a certain word to my text number. So then I knew everybody who sent that text with that word, I know that they came from the billboard, because the only place that I tell people to text that word is from the billboard. All right, that's a way that I can turn that into a direct response advertising process rather than just awareness advertising, which is what we call most of the advertisements you see on billboards or along the highway. It's just awareness advertising. It just makes you aware of the product, but it is not measurable. And a company like Apple can afford to do that. People like you and I, who need to measure how much money we're spending and how much it's bringing back, we can't afford to do that. So you're AT&T or Apple, you can do that kind of advertising that I'm describing, but the kind where you just are getting awareness, but there's no accountability. Us, we can't do that. We should not do that. And you should never let yourself get caught doing that. That would be foolish, and it would be business suicide, money suicide. Point number two. Today's topic, once again, is we are talking about how to know what you are doing. And by the way, what I said, point number one, is not to say that Apple and AT&T don't know what they're doing. It's just that they have the economies of scale to where they can afford to run unaccountable marketing and it doesn't hurt them. Whereas you and I, we cannot. Just to make sure I'm clear. Number two, baselines and parameters. We talked about this a little bit already in point number one. What is good enough? What's the baseline of something being good enough for you? Talk about good enough in episode number 2177. When good enough is simply good enough. What is acceptable and what is not? What's your level of acceptability for your performance? What is the finished point? How will you know when you're finished? You need to know when good enough is good enough for you. You need to know what needs to be completed and finished in order for you to be done with your work. Because especially those of us who are entrepreneurs, we're never technically done with our work. There's always more stuff that we could be doing, but you need to set baselines and parameters so that you know, okay, at 2 o'clock I'm done as long as I have this completed, or I'm done at the end of the day today because I did this, this, and this. You have to give yourself these parameters, otherwise you will literally work yourself to death and run yourself ragged just trying to do all the stuff that you could be doing in business. And the thing is, when you run a business, especially small business owners, again, there's never a point where you're completely finished with your work. So you have to give yourself parameters so you know when to stop and when to pause. Everybody understand? So at what point can you be finished with thing number one so you can move on to the second, third, and fourth things? And if you don't have a good enough point, what will happen is you'll run yourself into perfectionism, trying to perfect thing number one. And it goes 3 hours over your time budget for thing number one, simply because you're trying to make it perfect because you never defined what the baseline for good enough is for that first thing. You understand? So if you make it clear what the baseline is, it doesn't have to be perfect. If I'm recording an episode of this show, I record every episode of the show in one take. I've never re-recorded an episode of this show. Never, not one. Almost 3,000 episodes. I've never recorded another episode. Why? Because I know that I record the way that I want to say. Even if I fumble over a word or I missay something, I just go back and kind of say it over again. That's okay. That's good enough. All right. That's a good enough point for me. And that's what works for me. You need to know what the good enough points are for you and your thing. You know what your baselines are, and you need to have 100% control over those baselines. Actually, you already have 100% control, but many of you simply are not taking advantage because you're not setting any baselines, but they must exist. This is the most important point, and this is one that many people miss. What needs to happen when you have finished the job and it's okay to move on to the next thing? Again, you need to know. So, you're going back to the show as an example. The show comes out every day. It means I need to record 365 episodes a year at minimum. That's one episode per day. My baseline performance level is to record at least 8 episodes a week when I'm actively recording. So any week in which I record, I want to record at least 8 episodes that week. Why 8 episodes? Because there's 7 days a week, 7 days in a week. So if I record 8 episodes, what happens is I'm sandbagging one extra episode every week. So over the course of 4 weeks, let's say I now have 4 extra episodes recorded. But as I do this over time, sometimes I do more than 8. So if I bought myself some extra time, some extra days, right? So if I get sick and lose my voice, or I go on vacation, or I'm away for some reason, I'm not recording, I have extra episodes already in the can. This show continues to publish even when I haven't recorded for a week or two. So for example, as of today's recording, but not the day that you're listening to it, but the day that I'm recording it, I didn't do much recording for the last 3 weeks. But it didn't matter. I still had plenty of episodes in the can because I recorded so many extras that I had months worth of material already waiting that hadn't come out yet. And I was able to take that time away from recording and do other stuff. And then when I get back to recording, I can just build up my extras, build up my reserves even more already. One good thing about the type of show that I have is my content is evergreen. It's not based on current events or anything, so it doesn't really matter when an episode comes out. I can take every episode that I have, the next 3 weeks worth of episodes that are about to come out, and I could reshuffle the order of the episodes, and it won't matter because the content is evergreen. It's not based on a certain time frame. But again, that's what works for me. You need to figure out what works for you. Now, while 8 episodes in a week is my baseline, sometimes I'll record a lot more. Sometimes I'll record 10 or 14 or 20 episodes in a week. All of this is buying me extra time for if and when I need it. But I know what my baseline is do at least 8 in a week. Why? Because that buys me at least one extra day based on the week that just went by. 7 episodes came out that week. I recorded 8. Okay, I just bought me an extra day. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is how to know what you are doing. Number 3, knowledge. How well do you know the game that you're in and the rules of the game? Do you understand the fundamentals of the game that you're in? How much resources are you putting into your study of the game? These are very important points. The game that you're in. I've talked about this before when I did the episode on what business are you in. Let me see if I can find that episode number 2130. What business are you in? I talked about it also in episode 1273 and episode 2589. What businesses to not be in. You need to know what business you're in. Many entrepreneurs think they're in one business, but they're actually in another. You know exactly what business that you're in. A lot of people don't know what game they're playing, and this is the reason why you're not winning the game, because you think you're playing game A, but you're actually playing game B. You understand the fundamentals of your game. All right, there are fundamental principles that apply to every business that you could possibly be in. You need to know what those fundamental principles are, and if you don't know, you need to invest time in finding out what they are, why they matter, and how you can adjust your performance to fit the fundamentals of the game or to master the fundamentals of the game that you're in. How much of your resources are you putting into your study of the game? That's another important question. There are a lot of entrepreneurs who I meet and talk to who say they want to be in a certain space or they call themselves being in a certain space, but they're not putting any investment into learning how to best play that game. And this is the reason why there's a cap on your performance and your results, because you don't even know what you're doing. And you literally don't know what you're doing. You may notice that I've talked about this many times over the past few weeks and months on this show, these very points. Many people are in professions in which they are not doing anything but going through the motions. You are showing up, doing the bare minimum required for your job. You're not getting any better. You're not getting smarter. Your performance level is not going up. And then you're wondering why you're not getting the output. See, many people expect to get a raise, for example, in usually this happens when people are employed. People expect to get a raise just because they've been working at a job for a certain amount of time. If your performance has not improved, then why should you be making more money? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense for a business owner. Why would I pay more money to somebody whose performance is not producing more money? All it's doing is costing me money. So your output has to change if you want your income to change. Your contribution to the bottom line of a business has to change if you want to get more return for your efforts. Again, it doesn't make any sense to give more money to somebody whose production has not improved. But would it make sense to you, business owners? Any of you who's an employee who expects to get a raise after a certain amount of time, tell me why it logically makes sense for you to get a raise if your performance is producing the same amount it was, but you want more money. All right, how is that making sense for me as a business owner? Well, you see, I'll take by your silence that you understand it doesn't make sense. So some people say that the cost of living has increased. Well, my cost of living has increased, right? My rent is higher, gas is higher, groceries cost more. That's why you, as the business owner, should pay me more money. Well, I agree with half of what you said, which is I get it that your rent is higher. I get it that your gas and your groceries cost more money. Listen, I pay for those things too, so I know that those costs go up. But if costs of living are going up, then guess what else has to go up? All right, your output and your production to match the increased cost of living life. Because if the cost of life goes up, but your performance doesn't go up, then that means you're losing. You didn't get better, but life costs more, and you ain't gotten any better. Life is moving forward while you're standing still. That means by definition you're losing. It's like standing still on a moving treadmill. All right, anybody ever seen what happens when somebody does that? If you don't know, go to the gym, turn on the treadmill, let it start, and then just stand still and find out what happens. All right, that's you. All right, if you haven't gotten any better, but life is costing more money, but you're expecting more just because, that don't make any sense. Your output must go up with the increased cost of living if that's your argument that cost of living has increased. All right, your rent costs more than it did last year. Okay, then you better be a better performer than you were last year, or otherwise you're gonna be homeless. That's what it sounds like to me. So you better keep up the pace with the increase of the cost of being a human being on this planet. Or many of you are expecting that life should just give you more while you continue to give the exact same amount. Again, that's a bad deal. That's bad business. Is incorrect math. Is an inaccurate formula. No smart person would agree to that. And I'm assuming that you're smart. If you're not, you're going to get smart. Keep listening to the show. Let's recap today's class, which is how to know what you are doing. Point number one, militant measurement. That means you know exactly what you are doing by output, by time, and by benchmarks. Measuring your output and knowing exactly what's happening, when, where, and how. You can't hide if you are not performing when you're measuring, and it's obvious that you are performing when you're measuring, if whichever case it may be. Number two, baselines and parameters. What is your good enough point? What's your finish point? How do you know when you've done enough in one space so you can move on to the next thing? Because if you're going to be efficient in your time, you can't take everything to the 100% level. You can't be perfect at everything. All right, this is why we have the 80-20 principle. 80% of your results come from 20% of your inputs. Do you know when you're at the 80% level so you can move on to the next thing? Because you can't be perfect at everything. Nobody has the, first of all, no one has the skill to be perfect at everything, nor do you have the time. Number two, knowledge. How well do you know the game you're in and the rules of the game? Do you understand the fundamentals of the game? How much of your resources are you putting into your study of the game? Many people are in certain games and are not putting any resources into learning how to play that game. And they're wondering why they're not getting the results that they want in the game because you haven't put anything in. You put nothing in, you get nothing out, folks. If you're standing still and the world's moving forward, you're losing. All that said, text me so you get my daily motivation text. I send out every day. My number is 305-384-6894. It's down below in the description. Also down below in the description is the link to workonyourgameuniversity.com, which is the place where I do all my coaching. Any of you want to work with me directly, you would like to have me as your one-on-one coach, someone you can talk to on a regular basis to help you with your challenges, help you implement what you need to work on and get it done. I'm talking fast and get it done now. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. I will help you get to where you want to go. You got to meet me halfway at that link. Work on your game. Dre all